Have you ever felt like despite all your effort, nothing really seems to work out? You stress, overthink, and try so hard to control everything. Yet, the more you chase after perfection, the more it slips away, just out of reach. The tighter your grip, the faster it fades. It's not just some poetic idea. It's a truth rooted in Buddhist philosophy. Here's a truth you won't hear often: maybe the breakthrough doesn't come from doing more, but from letting go. Let that sink in. Because what if all this stress, all this anxiety, is just your soul's way of telling you, you're holding on to something that was never yours to carry? Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving yourself permission to be free. Free from overthinking. Free from seeking constant approval. Free from the invisible chains of perfectionism. This video isn't just another motivational speech. It's a quiet revolution. A gentle invitation to step back, breathe, and finally see things clearly. Stay with me till the end, because the truth waiting for you there might just be the peace you've been searching for all along. Part 1, The Trap of Control: Why You're Always Tired Inside. Let's be honest for a moment. Are you exhausted? Not because your schedule is too full. Not because life is too complicated. But because deep down, you're trying to control everything. You want things to go exactly as planned. You want people to understand you, to validate you. You want life to stop throwing curveballs. So you grip everything tighter, like if you let go even for a second, everything will fall apart. But here's the truth you need to confront. The more you try to control, the more control you lose. You worry about things that haven't happened. You dwell on things that already did. And between those two extremes, you forget the only thing that actually matters: this present moment. That constant tension in your chest. That exhaustion that never goes away. It's not from doing too much. It's from believing that if you don't keep everything under control, you'll be left behind. It's the belief that if you don't push harder, you'll fail. If you don't keep performing, you won't be loved. That if you stop, the world will move on without you. This is no longer about productivity or ambition. This is about trust, or rather, your lack of it. You don't trust that you're worthy of peace unless everything is perfect. And that's the trap. You're not living. You're managing your life like a crisis waiting to happen. Every morning, instead of feeling light, you brace yourself for the next problem. Every night, you don't rest, you just retreat from the pressure you couldn't conquer today. Your mind never stops. Always planning, overthinking, scanning for threats, measuring your worth through output. But let me ask you something. Why are you living like this? What are you trying so hard to protect, and what are you sacrificing in return? You don't need to control everything to feel safe. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. And you don't need to prove anything to earn your right to rest. Life isn't a fixed formula. It's a current. And that current will always feel like a storm until you stop resisting it. Part 2, The Truth About Letting Go: It's Not Weakness, It's Awakening. Let's clear up one of the biggest lies we've been taught. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is not weakness. It's not apathy, and it's not failure. It's actually one of the most courageous, powerful acts of self-liberation you'll ever make. See, we're raised to believe that we must keep fighting. Push harder. Control more. Never stop striving. But that mindset, while it may lead to temporary success, often robs you of peace. It fills your mind with anxiety and your heart with fear that if you stop pushing, you'll fall behind, lose everything, or worse, lose yourself. But here's the awakening. You were never meant to carry it all. You weren't born to micromanage the universe. You weren't designed to fix every problem, please everyone, or perfect every moment. You were meant to experience life, not grip it so tightly that it can't breathe. Letting go isn't about turning your back on your responsibilities. It's about releasing your obsession with outcomes. It's about surrendering the illusion that you can bend reality to your will and realizing that some of the most beautiful things in life happen when you step out of the way. Think about it. The sky doesn't fight the wind. The ocean doesn't resist the moon. Nature flows. And it thrives in that flow. So why are you trying to swim against the current of your own life? When you let go, you make space for clarity, for growth, for things to align naturally. You make room for surprises, for rest, for healing. And in that space, you rediscover something sacred, your own presence. Not the version of you chasing perfection. Not the one weighed down by everyone else's expectations. But the real you. The one that's still, quiet, and powerful in their own calm. Letting go means you stop clinging to stories that no longer serve you. I must be in control. I can't rest until everything's perfect. I need their approval to feel enough. You begin to rewrite those narratives with something more honest. Something more human. You begin to say, I choose peace over pressure. I trust the process more than my fear. I allow life to move without me needing to force it. And that shift, it doesn't happen in a dramatic moment. It happens softly, in the spaces between thoughts, in the silence after the storm. That's not weakness. That's awakening. Part 3, How You're Quietly Creating Your Own Suffering. What if I told you? The pain you feel most deeply, the restlessness, the frustration, the emotional exhaustion, much of it is self-inflicted? That's not an accusation. It's a truth most of us aren't ready to hear. But once you do, something shifts. We suffer not just because life is hard, but because we resist what is. We suffer because we argue with reality. Because instead of accepting the moment, we cling to how we think it should be. You tell yourself things like, this shouldn't be happening. They should treat me better. I should be further ahead by now. But here's the truth. That inner dialogue, that quiet war inside your head, that's where your suffering begins. Pain is inevitable. Life will throw challenges your way. But suffering? That's what happens when you attach yourself to expectations and refuse to let go of what's already gone. It's like gripping a rope that's burning your hands, but you refuse to release it. Not because it feels good, but because you think holding on gives you control. You think, if I let go of this grudge, they win. If I stop obsessing, I'll fail. If I stop caring, everything will fall apart. But what if the opposite is true? What if holding on is what's breaking you? What if the pressure you put on yourself is the real problem, not the situation, not the people, not the obstacles? Let's go deeper. You've been trained to believe your worth depends on outcomes. Success. Praise. Perfection. But what happens when life doesn't cooperate? You blame yourself. You tighten your grip. You suffer in silence. This internal loop, trying to control, failing to control, blaming yourself, is a trap. And most people live their entire lives inside it. So ask yourself, who told you that peace comes from control? Who taught you that love must be earned through suffering? Who convinced you that rest must be deserved? It's time to unlearn all of it. Because here's the truth no one told you. Your suffering doesn't prove your worth. Your peace does. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to not have all the answers. You are allowed to stop fighting battles that don't belong to you. And in doing so, you begin to create something rare in this world. Inner freedom. That's not denial. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And it starts the moment you say, I no longer choose suffering when peace is an option. Part 4, Change doesn't come from force, it comes from understanding. You've been taught that in order to change your life, you need to push harder. More discipline. More hustle. More pressure. But has that ever truly worked for the long term? Sure, you might get short-term results. You might meet deadlines, hit goals, please people. But deep inside, there's still a void. Still tension. Still that nagging feeling that you're not enough. Why? Because true transformation doesn't come from force. It comes from understanding. Let me explain. Force is external. It's about control. It says, I have to fix this now. It demands action without reflection. It creates anxiety when results don't show up instantly. But understanding? Understanding is internal. It says, I want to see clearly. I want to know myself deeply. It doesn't fight the moment. It listens to it. And that changes everything. When you understand why you react the way you do. When you understand where your fear comes from. When you understand the beliefs you've unconsciously absorbed for decades. That's when healing begins. You don't need more motivation. You need more self-awareness. You need to pause and ask. Why am I really afraid to let go? What am I trying to protect by holding on so tightly? Who would I be without this constant need to prove myself? That's where real change happens. Not in the chaos of constant doing but in the quiet honesty of being. When you stop running from your pain and start listening to it, you realize. It's not your enemy. It's your messenger. Your anxiety isn't a defect, it's a signal. Your exhaustion isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your anger isn't shameful, it's telling you where you feel powerless. You see, the goal isn't to fight your emotions. It's to understand what they're teaching you. Because once you understand, you stop blaming yourself. You stop forcing change. And you start allowing growth. The flower doesn't bloom because you scream at it. It blooms because the environment is right. In the same way, you don't become whole by forcing yourself to be better. You become whole by creating space for the truth. That who you are beneath the striving is already enough. Let go of the need to fix everything. Lean into the desire to understand yourself. And watch how life begins to open up, not because you controlled it, but because you aligned with it. Part 5, when you finally stop, life starts moving. There's a strange paradox most people never realize until it's too late. The moment you stop chasing life, it begins to chase you. Let that settle in. Because for years, you've been running. Running toward success. Running from failure. Running to be seen, heard, accepted, loved. But in all that running, did you ever pause long enough to ask? What am I really running toward? Or more honestly, what am I trying to outrun inside myself? Here's the truth: when you're constantly in motion, constantly pushing, constantly performing, you lose touch with what actually matters. And you miss the beauty that can only be felt when you're still. Stillness isn't laziness. Stillness is power. It's the moment the noise fades and your inner voice finally speaks. You realize you've been trying to control life like a machine. When really, life is a river. You don't fight the current. You flow with it. And here's the miracle. When you stop fighting for things that aren't meant for you, the things that are meant for you begin to arrive. Effortlessly. The right people. The right opportunities. The right timing. They appear not because you forced them but because you finally made space for them. You stop settling. You stop striving for approval. You start attracting what matches your inner peace, not your inner chaos. And this isn't just philosophy. This is how the universe works. When you align with who you truly are, calm, grounded, aware, you send out a signal. A frequency of trust. Of openness. Of clarity. And life responds. It doesn't mean life will be perfect. But it means you'll finally feel like you're moving with life, not against it. So the next time things feel stuck, instead of pushing harder, try something radical. Stop. Stop running. Stop fixing. Stop controlling. Breathe. Observe. Feel what's true right now without the mask, without the noise. Because life doesn't start when you finally figure it all out. Life starts when you surrender to the moment. And sometimes, the greatest action you can take is to do nothing but trust. Conclusion, the final lesson, and a message you need to hear. If you've made it this far, then something inside you is ready. Ready to let go. Ready to live differently. Ready to stop surviving and start experiencing life fully. So here's the final truth I want to leave with you. Letting go isn't a moment, it's a practice. A way of being. You won't wake up one day magically free from all expectations, pain, or control. But you will wake up each day with a choice. A choice to breathe instead of react. To soften instead of grip. To trust instead of fear. And slowly, quietly you'll begin to notice the shift. Less noise in your mind. Less tension in your body. More peace in your heart. Not because the world got easier, but because you stopped making it harder than it needs to be. You finally realize. You are not your past. You are not your achievements. You are not the opinions others hold of you. You are simply here, now, with the power to choose peace. That's the greatest freedom of all. And if no one has told you this before, let me be the first. You don't need to do more to be enough. You don't need to prove your worth through suffering. You don't need to fix everything before you allow yourself to feel joy. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to love yourself not when you're perfect, but right now, exactly as you are. So take this message with you not as motivation, but as remembrance. A soft voice in the back of your mind whispering when things get loud again. You don't have to hold it all. You were never meant to. And the more you trust that, the more your life begins to rearrange itself. Not through force, but through flow. Not through pressure, but through presence. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. Just clear the space and it will arrive. And finally, if there's one thing you take away from this entire journey, let it be this. When you stop clinging, stop chasing, and stop carrying the wrong way. That's when everything falls into place in the most honest, effortless, and beautiful way possible. Now breathe. You're exactly where you need to be.